Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maximo and I'm here doing another post-commentary video because my original commentary of this game was very unfocused and scattered because this game really gets on my nerves. There are a lot of things wrong with it and it's kind of an unfortunate last release from Mixed Bag Games, I must say. So I have about 25 minutes of footage here, one of which just ends with me giving up in absolute frustration on this game. Not that much to see in the options menu, although you're going to want to turn the music off, and I'll get to why that is shortly. There's your controls, there's nothing really too much to worry about there, so yeah, I'll just hop straight in. I had only played this for like an hour or two beforehand, and considering that I managed to get 40% of the way in, someone who's smarter than me, more capable than me at this sort of puzzle, would probably be capable of running through this game really quickly, mainly because of the fact that the game's got no difficulty curve whatsoever. So yeah, I do apologize for the post-commentary again. It's not going to match up with the video at all. I'm just looking at it at the screen right now. So here's how it works, more or less. It's basically a Sokoban game with a couple of extra tricks on top of it. The way the level locks and stuff like that works is you start in an area, and you can walk into these circles in order to get straight into a puzzle. However, they will also block your way forward, so you might end up having to walk into a certain circle in order to get to another set of circles, which are all puzzles in and of themselves. So, yeah, basically do puzzles to unlock more puzzles. That seems to be the long and the short of it. The more you do, the more levels you get. Easy enough. So for some reason, they even put little weird puzzles out here to make you go through before it actually lets you get into the levels. Like, I don't get the idea of this one at all. Why lock off all the levels from me? Why not just let me go to them all at once? I know that's a nitpick, but I have a lot of nitpicks in this game, so I guess it's about time I start to explain it. I'm just waiting for the video to catch up to the actual level before I really go too deep into it. Loading times aren't particularly great for something that's so unbelievable. Well, not so much unbelievably simple, but it's simple. So I don't know why it takes so long to load, but, well, there you go. So, here's the overall goal of the game. You have to collect that clock. Once you collect that clock, the exit portal opens, and then you can walk into the exit portal. Then when you've walked into the exit portal, well, that's it. But collecting the clock also causes all the enemies to wake up. So you need to You need to be able to get there without actually running into any trouble with all those enemies. So, that's pretty much it. The game works on a grid-based movement system, and this is the first problem I have with the game. The grid movement system is simple enough to understand. You move with the D-pad, obviously, and you move on a grid, so it means you're locked to specific areas. So when you tap the key, it'll move you across that grid. But that's not how the system works. Your first tap in a given direction will face you that direction, then the second tap will move you a half grid across. Then the third tap will move you a full grid across, as in you'll finish going another half grid and you will continue on, more or less after that. So the downside to this movement system is that while it doesn't enable some precision, for the most part, it's just horribly clunky and really unpleasant to actually use under your fingers when you actually pick it up and start trying to use it. And this game doesn't really require precision as much as it requires speed, because the movement speed in general is just annoyingly slow. And this whole saunter thing just gets on my nerves more than almost anything else in the game. So, yeah, it's kind of frustrating like that. You do also have the ability to undo movements, or at the very least, some movements. You saw how I pressed the L button there. It sent me backwards to before I hit the clock. This undo is not consistent. If you are playing the game after the clock and you press the L button, it sends you back to the clock, but if you are before the clock, it will undo one step. And there are multiple times in this video where I keep thinking to myself, oh, I want to go back one step, so I hit the L button, and it throws me all the way back to before I actually hit the fucking clock. So I have to go through this section again and again and again because the undo is inconsistent and shitty, and I have no idea why that's a thing. You get 4 power-ups in this game. You get the ability to throw out a fireball in the grid in front of you, which will destroy anything it comes into contact with, which you just saw. You have the ability to freeze, which can freeze either yourself, your clones, or your enemies, and use them as blocks. You have the ability to walk over water for 10 seconds, and you have the ability to, as I said before, clone yourself. You can create a clone of yourself, fling it across the room, and then swap to it and control it individually. However, these controls are all as slow and frustrating to deal with as the movement, so you just end up in this position where you end up just having a lot of trouble getting it to work the way you want to, and I can't stand it, if I'm being honest. I can't stand it at all. And you don't actually get to use that many of the powers. Like, for whatever reason, they don't come up, well, at least not yet. There might be some clever puzzles later on which require you to use all 4 of your powers, but for some reason, some of them are just locked to these puzzles. Like, I can understand why they're locked to that puzzle, but it doesn't change the fact that you play a lot of puzzles in this game with a series of locked out powers. So you end up only playing with a small amount of the powers for at least what feels like most of the game, and it's frustrating because you could have done something decent with these powers and all this puzzle stuff, but it just doesn't seem to want to work out properly for you. And that kind of sucks, honestly. Doesn't help the fact that the game's difficulty curve is thoroughly inconsistent. So, just the overall, like, level of difficulty of the game goes up and down like a bloody maniac. When you go into one level, you'll end up in a position where you get through the level in 30 seconds because it's entirely easy to see what you need to do, and then they just have this complicated mess of boxes and enemies and shit that you run into, and it can get really frustrating and it can take ages. It just doesn't seem to have a good solid idea of what good difficulty is, and it just seems to go back and forth between the good ideas and the bad ones all the time. And it's really frustrating. It's honestly extremely frustrating just how often you'll get stuck in a bad puzzle. It isn't helped by the fact that if you want to go back and try out a different puzzle and come back later, unless you rewind all the way back to the beginning of the puzzle that you were on, it won't actually let you go out. You have to save and quit if you want to actually get back to the beginning, and then it'll let you, from the beginning, go back out to the select the puzzle screen. It makes no sense why he would do it this way, and that's just one of the few things in, one of a lot of things in this game that actually doesn't make any bloody sense. You want to know what else doesn't make sense in this bloody game? You get 3 hints. 3. There's no way to unlock any extra hints. There's apparently no way to recant a hint. You just get 3 hints. Use all 3 hints and the entry just disappears from your pause screen, and that's it. And the 3 hints that I actually tried to get were pretty terrible. So, yeah, that's just a dick. Like, it really is just a dick. I mean, even with most of the puzzles being so simple, even a toddler could solve them just by looking at them once or twice. It's just incredibly frustrating. Just all of the weird things in this game that he's done that make absolutely no sense to me. There is one more thing I've got listed here, and that's the music's horrible. Now, it isn't too bad for a while, but it loops constantly. It's the same track. It's like a 5-10 minute track, something like that, and it starts to loop. And eventually you'll start hearing this awful screeching, this screaming that sounds like it's from a, it reminds, like, I know this is a reference that absolutely nobody will get, but there's a group called Retspray, and they were doing videos on bad Flash games. And they did this one on a game called Death Trap, which had this weird musical cue of this lady going, ah, in the background, and that's all I could think of when I was hearing it. And since the game's music loops every few minutes, you'll be hearing this screaming constantly, and it just doesn't fit with the rest of the tone of the game, and it just makes me want to shut it off. And that's pretty much everything I've got written down here. The more I played this game, the more pissed off I got with the bad movement, the lack of interesting puzzles, the lack of difficulty curve, the inconsistent undo, the terrible screaming in the music for no discernible reason, and it's just yeah, I can't stand it. I really can't. It's just, it's driving me mental just thinking about having to play this game for much longer. And thankfully I don't have to now, because I've got the video done, I've got the recording done, and yeah, I'm just going to let the rest of the video play out. There's no point letting this footage go to waste. At least you'll be able to see what some of the other puzzles look like. But if you couldn't tell, I don't recommend it at all. I feel like I've wasted my time playing, and I feel like you'll have been wasting your time playing it as well. So there you go. This has been Blue Maxima, and I'll see you all next time.